Alright everyone, Sargon has come under fire again from Right Wing Watch, so I figured I'd make a video defending him because, you know, like, I'm looking at it, I'm sitting there laughing my ass off. I've even got people that are, like, I guess fans of my work when I'm responding to the whole thing. Saying, well, Sargon actually literally said this, so ha ha. You do realize there's such a thing as making a mistake, right? Let me weigh in. Let me tell you, for people that don't know what happened. What happened is this. Sargon was talking, I think, to Millennial Woes, and mentioned the Heather Heyer incident, you know, the Charlottesville car attack. And he said, oh, well, yeah, after all, she died of a heart attack, not being hit by a car, which that is false. Right Wing Watch then took that, in the context of a general discussion about giving advice to the alt-right, by the way. They took that and they did a little write-up saying, oh, well, here's Sargon basically, spouting off neo-Nazi propaganda. Don't you think it's within the realm of possibility? I know he's Sargon, and so you assume that he's fucking infallible and can never make a fucking mistake. Don't you assume that there's the vague possibility that occasionally he could be taken in by something that's, inaccurate or partially inaccurate? Don't you think that's a possibility? Like, I can remember when some of these sites like the Daily Current were new, a lot of people were circulating their material as though it was real. They believed it. It wasn't to be malicious. They weren't trying to fool others. They actually thought it was true. So the first thing is, why did you assume malice and intent to do so? Why didn't you contact Sargon? I think he alluded to this. He's like, well, you should actually talk to us. And then Christensen, I think, jumped in to defend him too. Last night on Twitter, he's like, well, you should actually talk to the dude. Why didn't you contact him and say, hey, this isn't true. What are your thoughts on this? Maybe if you had said, well, it's not true. Here's the source that, disproves it completely. Maybe you would have said, oh, well, shit, I made a mistake. Thanks for pointing that out. Maybe that would have happened. But you see, that's not, they've got a presupposition that Sargon is a Nazi gatekeeper. Now, I'll tell you what that means. When they put me or Sargon or whoever else on a list of people who aren't Nazis, but they talk to Nazis a little too much, what they're saying is, hey, these are people we want to label ethno-nationalists in the future. We're just waiting for an excuse to do so. That's exactly what it means. I'll defend Holt here vaguely as well. Let me point something else out. Holt is one person in Right Wing Watch. I do not believe that he's the ultimate arbiter of these hit pieces that are coming out. I can't believe it because I've spoken to the dude. Again, you got to be willing to talk to people. The concept. Right Wing Watch should have contacted Sargon, been like, respond to this. What did you actually mean? Was this? Do you actually believe this? Are you a Nazi? Just ask him. He'll say no. At the same time, if you have a problem with somebody, actually attempt communication. If you just come out and blast somebody, they're never going to be receptive. You got to be civil with people, even if you deeply disagree with them. Trust me, I'm in a write-up from Right Wing Watch that basically defames me, and I'm still willing to talk to the dude. Trust me, I can be good at human communication as long as it's online. Not so much in person. Trust me. Then Holt comes out. Oh, but first... And then they were like, oh, and Sargon was, trying to help the alt-right because he's giving him advice. I give advice to the liberals in this country regularly. It doesn't make me a liberal. I give advice to the Democratic Party and tell them they're being stupid and they need to change the way that they're doing things. It's not because I have some undying love for the Democrats. I'm pointing out that they're being morons because I don't like it when people are being morons. Sargon's pointing out, hey, the alt-right could do things differently. Why is that a problem? What, he's not allowed to talk about that topic? You see, you think that there are topics that should be taboo that people don't discuss. It's the same way people thought during, like, the Red Scare. Oh, you can't talk about any form of socialism. That makes you a commie. Satanic Panic. Oh, you can't listen to the metal. That makes you a devil worshiper. It makes you, you're going to the Presidio with Aquino. You're doing terrible things. That's what it's thought. When we look back at these moral panics, and I have to get into a Holt tweet here as well. We look at those and we look at the claims that were made then, the guilt by association, the assumptions, the conflations, everything, every bit of propaganda. We say, oh, that was like, they were so uncivilized. It's obviously fake. They thought witches were everywhere. They saw Reds under the bed. And we look back and we have a good chuckle at them. But somehow people get this weird cognitive dissonance where they think today is the end of all time. It will never be antiquated. And today's moral panic is totally true. Bullshit. Absolute unending bullshit. You'll see it. There will be people who will proclaim me a visionary 10 years from now for predicting these sorts of things. And it's just fucking common sense. It's just history. It repeats itself because we never learned from it. Just look back. That's all you have to do. It doesn't take someone who's smart to realize this. You could be dumb. It doesn't matter. Then Holt makes a tweet. This is funny. And he's talking about somebody else. I'm not sure. I didn't bother to look at who it was. And the person was like, oh, I like Lana, you know, from Red Ice Radio. I can't pronounce, Locktef, I think is her last name. You know, if I get that wrong, don't jump down my throat. The person was talking about, like, aesthetics and fashy haircut and stuff. So, like, aha, you know, here's an example of someone who pretends not to be a Nazi, but, you know, obviously is a Nazi. I like the aesthetic vaporwave sort of music stuff. I like Lana. I think she's a kind person. That doesn't mean that I agree with all of her views. As for the fashy side, I'm not so much into that. You can tell. Yeah, I look really fashy right now. No, I'm going for more of that, like, biker goth look or something like that. It's because it's cool. It's what I happen to like. You know, who fucking cares? But, yeah, this is a microcosm of the moral panic. Because people said the same things back in the 80s, and literally word for word, the same thing. You do realize that the sort of aesthetic vaporwave thing is, you know, basically similar to like early 80s like synthwave or minimalist wave. Look up minimal wave and go to a playlist. If you like the sort of aesthetic, sort of Macintosh music, you're gonna love it. You go through it and this is mostly from the 80s. There's some retro stuff as well that's like, actually, there was a minor renaissance of such things in the mid-2000s. Then it dies down, and then you have sort of the aesthetic stuff you have now. As far as fashy haircut or fascist sort of clothing or style, that was in full swing in the 80s too. And guess what? It even ties further into the current moral panic, because during the satanic panic, I've talked to some of these people. I've actually physically spoken with some of these people. You wouldn't believe it, what you would learn if you would just talk to people, communicate with them a little bit more, and not assume that you know everything about something and actually attempt to get more info. During the mid-80s especially, it was extremely common for somebody who was rumored to be a Satanist to also be called a Nazi. You know why? Because there were people like Boyd Rice, a Church of Satan member, higher ranking, high priest, you know, friend of Anton. Friend at the time of Nicholas and Xena, you know, Xena being the communications director, you know, before Peggy Nadramia takes over, which is hilarious. And he used fascist symbolism in his musical work. Oddly enough, the Ouroboros looks very similar, you'll notice, to the one that I use. Now, it's for totally different reasons. Mine's more of an Eastern reference to, like, the completion of time. I'm not exactly sure what his was supposed to represent, but he had, like, the unequal symbol, and he would wear a shirt that said rape to a concert just to piss people off, and he's basically a real-life troll. But people thought he was an actual ethno-nationalist at the time. They thought he was a Nazi, and it didn't help. You know, Nicholas or somebody. They talked to Boyd Rice. I mean, not Boyd, Tom Metzger. Now, Tom Metzger used to head the Ku Klux Klan. It was guilt by association. Somebody who ultimately, they're sitting there chuckling at Metzger, like, what's this dude's fucking snorting? They're not an ethno-nationalist. They're using that imagery within the context of a concert. It's literally artistic. They're evoking the imagery because it's something they want to sort of play act. It's Shakespearean. Everyone, all the smaller minds take it totally literally. And they say, well, this person's singing about incubus. They must worship the devil in a literal sense. They couldn't even wrap their brains around the idea of atheistic Satanism being a fucking floor show to fool people like you. They couldn't wrap their minds around it. Or they said, well, and the Radio Werewolf, that's in reference to like the last broadcasting Nazi propaganda station. They must be Nazis. And of course, I think, if I read correctly, Wilhelm ended up leaving the band because they were constantly mobbed by ethno-nationalists that mistook their music to be literal. They thought it was literally a Nazi rally. But that's just how they set up their act. It was of interest. It was something artistic. It's not meant to be taken at face value. But you, meaning Holt, Right Wing Watch, the mainstream media, are a step removed from the subcultures that involve themselves with these things. When somebody makes a reference to aesthetic, or here's Hitler Pepe, most of it's just a fucking act. It's funny to people. It's comedy. It's interesting. It can be Shakespearean in form. Sometimes people play act to be something that they're not. Have you even spoken to Sargon? I spoke with Sargon. I didn't get any vibe from him. Oh, yeah, he's a secret Nazi. He wants to gas and purge people. Bullshit. Absolute unending bullshit. Totally false. I promise you. Upon my honor, I promise you that that's totally false. Didn't he get banned from Twitter for sending gay porn to some Nazis, actually? I'm 99% sure that's actually what happened. I'm pretty sure that's why he got banned. He was like sending him porn links. And he's like, oh, you're an ethno-nationalist. Well, congrats. And then sending him gay stuff. Piss him off. Troll them. So how the fuck is he an ethno-nationalist? It doesn't make any sense. Look, when things don't make sense, occasionally they're true. But when they make like sub-zero sense, like they're totally off the wall, it's like being in Alice in Wonderland land. Then you can be assured it's a lie. It's not real. Right Wing Watch gets this one totally wrong. Yeah, the Heather Heyer thing. Yeah, there were a lot of people who thought she had died of a heart attack because they were being shown false info. It doesn't mean that Sargon... Do you think that Sargon was like sitting there, he's in his underwear and he's scratching his belly and there's like Red Bull sweat dripping down his face. He's like, haha, watch this, it'll be great. And he starts shitposting on 4chan right after Charlottesville and he's like, I'm going to convince him that this Nazi is actually just a scapegoat and Heyer died of a heart attack because of the fright of this car almost hitting her and there was no actual hit. Ha 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 ha. Praise Hitler. Do you honestly think that's how he thinks? I'm gonna call bullshit on that. I think that's bullshit. Then I see, this was a funny thing recently with some of this fucking Nazi bullshit. Artie, I think, weighed in on it. He actually made a post there, Artie Quitter. He's an anti-censorship man. This is one of the reasons I respect him so much. He's severe anti-censorship, hates the PC stuff, but he doesn't hate the PC stuff because he's a Nazi. He hates it because it wants to denigrate basically his form of income. Now, who does that sound similar to? Who stands to lose from heavy-handed censorship? The legacy media, that already has the FCC and all this other bullshit to worry about? Or the alt media? You think that for some people it boils down to pure commercialism? It goes beyond just, in my case, goes beyond my libertarian ideology. It's also one of my main forms of income. So when I see people want to censor and moral panic this and moral panic, look, they're exaggerating the threat of the far right. A total exaggeration. It would be like proclaiming that Antifa was actually going to rise up and kill people. You'll notice, when that rumor was started, all of these same pundit class individuals, Right Wing Watch and all the others, they said, well, that's ridiculous. It's never going to happen. It'd be like 2 people would show up and it's probably fake anyway. That's right. Why don't you assume that that same thing is true about elements of the further right? I'm not talking about the lukewarm identitarians of the world or the new right. I'm talking about those that are out there that say, ha ha ha, gas is a great thing and they have swastikas everywhere. Don't you think that some of that is deliberately to piss you off? I remember back when B was still considered the internet hate machine and it wasn't, Paul. I can remember when, the right-wing pundits like the O'Reillys, they said, well, it's a far-left place of gathering. Meanwhile, I'm going there at the time. Now, remember, it's getting proclaimed far-left, and yet all I'm seeing is like Jew meme and Hitler. That's basically all that was there on B at the time when Bill O'Reilly made those comments. That and people trolling Oprah, which, by the way, was hilarious, memeing to her. And yet they thought it was far-left, and it was like, that's a total joke. It was never far-left. It's also not technically far right. There is no single ideology on any of these groups. There's no single ideology on a site that has 2 or more people. Oh, how YouTube far right became famous. Oh, YouTube is far right now because somebody has a presence on here that talks about politics and they're not to the left of Stalin. Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah, sorry that Sargon doesn't have a Mao shirt. I apologize for that. I'm sorry that I don't come out here and I have like a brutalist communist Mao shirt and a bunch of tanky bullshit on my back shelf. I'm gonna replace that with the Soviet flag so that people will not do hit pieces about me. It's apparently what you're gonna have to do. So at what point is the Minuteman flag from Fallout 4, by the way, gonna be used as a Nazi symbol? Like, if you want to defame me, All you gotta do is shitpost on 4chan until a handful of actual identitarians think that that's like the new secret symbol of fascism. So then you can do a hit piece about me. That's the sort of bullshit that they do. You know, it becomes harder to hold the legacy media accountable when they too can post anonymously online. Of course they shill on there. Of course they do. We know that they visit 4chan. What, they're not posting at all? They just sit back and lurk? You know, they would know enough to just lurk more? Yeah, bullshit. No, they interact with the community. They try to do everything they can to deploy propaganda there. Because it makes the money. There's a fiscal motivation for it. Of course they fucking push their material and their stories and bullshit. It's free advertising. It takes them 2 seconds. Of course they're going to push it on there. So anyone that thinks that Sargon is a Nazi, you know, come on. Seriously. It's totally false. It has been false, and it always will be false. Most of the other people on their hit lists are also not Nazis. There are ethno-nationalists there. That's definitely true. The problem is a lot of these lists don't include any of them. Oh, Sargon the Nazi sticks, you know, he's a civic nationalist. You know, I left that term behind because it began to mean something that doesn't appeal to me. Like, that's the other problem. You've got shifting definitions. It's like the idea of symbolism. Like some of these posts that you see, where people are anonymous usually, they're saying, oh, the new symbol of Nazis will be this. Don't you think there's the vague possibility that that was popularized by people that simply wanted to destroy groups that are not ethno-nationalistic that were using that? Do you think that's a possibility? It's the same thing with definitions. The original meaning of the alt-right was totally different from what it means now. And so people who unwisely adopted that moniker, and then they aren't like skinheads, well, now they get lumped in with them. It makes them easy fodder. And I warn people not to use such categories. Don't use these terms and categories. You're playing other people's games. You can't win at somebody else's game. They control the rules. Well, then you're screwed. Now, the Republican Party just learned this the hard way with the Roy Moore loss. Yeah. Yeah, but a lot of people have a lot to learn. Let's just put it that way. You don't have to be intelligent to even understand these things. Just understand one fundamental principle. The world is a stage and all the people in it are merely players. It's all Shakespeare. Shakespeare is probably the smartest dude that ever existed. Your reality is manipulated on a constant basis. So if you're playing other people's games, they're the ones that can manipulate within that game. You can't. You're the Padawan. Good luck. Yeah, rarely you'll survive the encounter. You still won't win. Maybe you get chased off, become a hermit or something. That's the best you can hope for in such a situation. That's my advice to independent content creators: don't play their game anymore. Don't even half the time you shouldn't even respond to hit pieces. Because they're not meaningful. Your fans might, but you don't need to, because then it gets them more money. That's the other thing. I think Right Wing Watch wants to basically is clickbaiting right now. It knows Sargon has, 10 times more fans than Right Wing Watch has, so they know, oh, we'll do, every week or so, we'll just do a hit piece on a different YouTuber. Oh, the ads will come in. Pretty soon we'll be like as powerful as the ADL or something. That's what they're hoping for. They want money. Maybe the Soros bucks dried up. Or maybe they didn't dry up. Maybe that's why they're willing to risk defamation suits on such topics. That's about all. Peace out.